warning. We're monitoring mainly for winds gusting upwards of 60 miles per hour. We could have some small hail in the mix as well. We're talking hail sizes closer to about, I would say, M&M size at best. We may see a little bit larger hail trying to get into the mix there, but that is our main concern with that. And then again, we are monitoring that tornado warning, the tornado warning going until 5:45 p.m. So this is mainly for Ashtabula counties. Areas outside of Ashtabula County, we have seen some scattered showers and thunderstorms throughout the afternoon. I'll zoom this picture out. Nothing else is severe at this time. Until we see that tornado warning expire, though, we are going to remain on the air to hopefully get you folks through what is the remainder of this warning. All right, looks like we're still tracking a little bit of rotation. Again, this is mainly riding just to the south of Route 11. It's where you see those reds and those green colors meeting. Just now to the east of Highway Route 46. So if you live just east of there, or just west of there, I guess I should say, the strongest part of the rotation is now east of your area. So that tornado threat is diminishing for basically areas just to the west of Route 46. But those that live basically between 322 and 11, so again, just to the south of the Cherry Valley area, that is where we are monitoring the strongest of the rotation, where the potential is there that we could have a tornado. Now, this is all radar indicated. We have not heard of any confirmation. This is moving over a relatively rural spot in Ashtabula County. But again, until we really see significant weakening or we see the National Weather Service able to lift that tornado warning, we are going to continue to keep you updated. Quick update from the National Weather Service. They are continuing to monitor that rotation. They are noting that it has weakened substantially, which is what we have also noted here in the 19 First Alert Weather Center. Basically, what they're telling us is that they'd like to see this trend continue for at least a couple more scans before they consider canceling the warning, which makes sense because sometimes what can happen is these storms can basically recycle on themselves, meaning they tap into areas that have not seen rain and thunderstorm activity so far today, so temperatures have been a little bit warmer, and sometimes that can help to feed these thunderstorms, especially if there's nothing else in the way to prevent them from continuing to strengthen. So that's what we're going to have to see. Sometimes these storms cycle. It takes a few radar scans to see if that is going to happen. But for now, we have seen a gradual weakening trend. I'll go back a little bit on radar imagery. As the storm was moving through the Orwell area, there you could see those reds and those greens pretty strong in terms of the rotation right there. And that was closer to about 4:51, just before that tornado warning was prompted. The colors, you notice, get a lot brighter right there, right around 5:06. And that is where we were the most concerned, with seeing the strongest of the rotation, where we could have potentially had a tornado. Because again, we did see a little bit of debris that could have been lofted into the atmosphere. Basically, we were sampling things from our radar that wasn't necessarily just rainfall. But then as we've gone forward in time, we've really started to see not only those two colors spread out just a bit more, but we've also seen them not look quite as intense, not quite as bright. And for us, that's a good clue that the rotation is becoming a lot broader as those colors spread out from one another. And if they're not as bright, that's a potential that that rotation is weakening just a bit more. And that's good news. That's what we want to continue to see. But for now, while that tornado warning is still in effect, we are going to continue to monitor things closely. If you live in Cherry Valley, basically this tornadic thunderstorm is knocking on your doorstep. We'll put another track on this. It's moving pretty slow to the northeast at about 15 miles per hour. But again, this puts it in Cherry Valley here within the next about 10 to 15 minutes or so. West Andover at right around 5:43, Andover at 5:22. So if you know anybody that lives in those areas that may be driving basically right along State Route 193 here within the next 10 to 15 minutes, have them pull over somewhere, stop and wait for this storm to pass by, because it will. It may take a little bit of time, but once it does, then we will at least be in the clear from the potential that we could have a tornadic thunderstorm. Again, I realize we are continuing to stay on the air for this one tornado warned storm. Not everybody across Northeast Ohio is seeing severe weather. I recognize that. But until this severe thunderstorm warning that is capable, or the tornado warning, I should say, is capable of producing a tornado is allowed to expire, we are going to stay on the air. so that folks have the latest information and can stay as safe as possible. If you live in Cherry Valley, you need to be in your safe place right now. That means a basement, any type of interior room. If you do not have access to a basement, that basically puts as many walls between you and the outside as possible. Just in case there is any flying debris potentially, that would be your best way to protect yourselves, your family, from any potential tornado or tornado damage that could be being lofted basically up into the air. If you live in Andover, you still have a little bit of time, but certainly I would keep very close eyes on this, even though you are not in the tornado warning specifically. This is something that is going to pass by pretty close to you, and it may pass a little too close for comfort. We'll see if they continue this tornado warning. So far, I have not heard anything from the National Weather Service just yet. They mentioned about 5-10 minutes ago that they were going to continue to monitor for new radar scans. So as we continue to gather new data and see whether or not the rotation looks persistent enough to allow the warning to expire. We have not heard that officially though just yet. Going on to the severe thunderstorm warning, just to get a quick update, because I do know those gustier winds are starting to move into Ashtabula proper. We are going to continue to see this part of the line, and it's still pretty strong. I mean, we've still been seeing winds gusting upwards of at least 45 miles per hour. Possible, if not stronger than that, upwards of 60 miles per hour. So folks in Ashtabula, this storm is basically knocking on your doorstep right now. If you live out towards the Conneaut area, you still have about another 15 minutes or so before that storm is in your area. And once you get past that initial push of air out of that thunderstorm, it'll still be gusty. You'll still have a lot of rainfall behind it, but the worst of the storm at that point will be out of your area. And that severe thunderstorm warning goes until 5:45 p.m. So we still have another about 20 minutes or so left on that severe thunderstorm warning. But again, the reason we're on air is because of this tornado warning. Cherry Valley folks, please make sure you are in your safe place right now. Again, we are still seeing some pretty decent rotation. The fact that we haven't heard anything from the National Weather Service yet still means they're likely still a little concerned with what we're seeing right here. And that's where those reds and those greens are meeting, basically just to the south of State Route 11. Cherry Valley folks, if you are not in your safe place now, you need to turn up the volume on your TV until this is passed. When we'll let you know when it has, there is the potential that we still have a lot of rotation in that storm, and we could potentially see a tornado produced out of it. I do want to turn on our what we call a correlation coefficient. It's a fancy term for sampling if there is any potential debris that is being lofted, and that can be basically anything other than raindrops that our radar is sampling. So sometimes if you have a lot of hail in thunderstorms, that'll get mixed in with that and you'll see a color differentiation. But we did start to see a little bit of those colors mixing in right there. So that was right around 5:04, and it was when we basically saw the strongest of the rotation just to the east of the Orwell area. So there's the potential we did have a brief touchdown. It's hard to say. We would have to have the National Weather Service go out and do a survey if there was one. But we are continuing to note that we still have some colors that I don't love moving through the Cherry Valley area. So that could potentially still be other debris that's being moved from this thunderstorm in the air around the Cherry Valley area, or there's the potential that we still have, again, that rotation, and we could be monitoring for that tornado that could be moving through the area as well. So again, this is a storm that's been moving pretty slowly off to the northeast. Looks like they trimmed back more of the tornado warning, but they are letting it continue, which makes sense considering what we have just been talking about on First Alert Doppler Network. All right, they updated the speed a little bit, so it's moving now east at about 20 miles per hour. They're still concerned with that thunderstorm that has the potential of producing a tornado. Folks, if you are in Cherry Valley right now, you do need to be in your safe place because this tornadic thunderstorm is knocking on your doorstep. You'll notice too that they extended the warning a little bit farther down to the south, so we may see this turn a little bit to the right. That happens with these more individualized thunderstorms sometimes, so that is why the updated track takes it more so to the east. And that's usually a good indication. I'm gonna have to zoom this radar view out real quick. that your storm is tapping into a lot of instability, basically in the atmosphere. And it's feeding off of those warm, humid conditions that we've been experiencing throughout the day. I realize we have not seen a lot of sunshine, but sometimes that doesn't matter. Sometimes all you need is just a little bit of that warm, muggy air mass to move in and allow these storms to basically feed off of it. So if we move this to the east at about 20 miles per hour, this will put it in Andover here within the next 15 minutes or so. And then basically outside of northeast Ohio, once we get closer to about 550, I would imagine, at that point. Update from the National Weather Service, noting the rotation is strengthened, so we're going to let the tornado warning basically remain in place. Colebrook, I know we had mentioned you folks and New Lyme. You are now in the clear. The main concern for our rotation at this point now is for the Cherry Valley area. So I'm going to really zoom in. I'm going to try and get some roads, but it's a pretty rural area. So again, if you are familiar with this portion of Ashtabula County, if you know folks that maybe live out in this area, again, we're talking between State Route 11 and State Route 193. So there's State Route 11. This is really where the strongest of the rotation sits right now, and 193. If you know anybody that lives between there, State Route 6, which is just to the north, heading into Cherry Valley, tell them to pause. Wait until this storm has passed. It will, but it's going to take some time because it's moving pretty slowly off to the east at about 15 miles per hour, or 20 miles per hour, which is the updated time there. So again, folks in Cherry Valley, this is where the tornadic thunderstorm sits. There's our rotation, relatively broad, but tight enough that we are concerned with the potential that this storm could still produce a tornado. In terms of debris that we've been monitoring, you can see where we have colors other than that purple, which is basically an indication to us that we may have some debris that has been lofted into the atmosphere. Now, whether that is because we have an ongoing tornado right at this point, or it's still debris that could have been lofted from previous areas where this storm could have produced a tornado, or at least some gusty winds to push some of that non-rainfall type of signatures into the atmosphere, remains to be seen. That would be something the National Weather Service would have to go out and perform a survey on. But again, that is where we are concerned with the potential that we could have a tornado. It's basically right along and south of State Route 11 there, and State Route 6. It's basically right where those two intersect that we have the strongest signatures in terms of rotation. And I realize this is a relatively rural area of Ashtabula County, but until this rotation either weakens or we no longer are concerned with the potential that this storm could produce a tornado or the tornado warning is allowed to expire, we're going to stay with you on the air, because it's important that everybody gets the best information possible in order to be able to stay safe when severe weather is occurring. All right, another track on this. Moving to the east at about 20 miles per hour. This puts it in Cherry Valley here, basically right now. The rotation's basically just west of town at this point, but right over the heart of Cherry Valley here, right around 534, Andover currently at 550. Severe thunderstorm warning for Ashtabula County, 60-mile-an-hour wind gusts. That goes until 6:30 p.m. 60-mile-an-hour winds, penny-sized hail possible. This includes Ashtabula and Conneaut, North Kingsville. I think those are some of the bigger cities. Pierpont, as we monitor that severe storm, which, if I zoom this out, you can see it. Put on reflectivity. Basically where this severe thunderstorm warning is right there, generally, into the east. So the western portions of Ashtabula County, you are in the clear. We're going to focus back on our tornado-warned storm. We also have a decent gust of wind just to the north of the Dorset area. Sampling winds up here, upwards of 50 miles per hour. So one of the reasons why that severe warning watch box or severe warning box goes as far as it does because we have these little individual clusters of storms that are capable of producing some pretty strong winds. Not everybody is going to see that, but if we go even up towards Ashtabula, you could certainly see where we have a lot of those bright pinks, winds sampling upwards of 53 miles per hour to possibly even 60 miles per hour will be possible for areas especially closer to the lakeshore there in Ashtabula. All right, let's go back down to our tornado warned storm. Trying to see if there's any updates from the National Weather Service. I'm not seeing anything. For folks that were in Colebrook as well as New Lyme, the warning is no longer in effect. The tornado warning no longer in effect for your area, so you are in the clear. You can come out of your safe space. We are no longer worried about that tornadic thunderstorm. But if you are in Cherry Valley, the rotation is basically right on top of you. And I realize this is a pretty rural area of Ashtabula County, the southern portions where this tornado warning is in effect. So we may not get a whole lot of reports coming in as to whether or not there is a tornado on the ground. We really have to base most of our observations off of radar data that we are receiving both from Cleveland's radar as well as Pittsburgh radar. The problem with where Ashtabula County is located compared to our radars is that you're scanning relatively higher up into the storm. So if you are seeing rotation, there is the potential that some of that rotation is close to the ground, but you're really sampling that data a little higher up into the storm. But of course, if that rotation is strong enough, that can certainly pull whatever kind of funnel cloud, if there is one, down to the ground, and you can get those brief spin-up tornadoes. And we did talk about that briefly yesterday when we were kind of detailing out what could happen with the storms across Northeast Ohio today. So I'm going to go back on your debris tracker. I'm going to zoom it out a little bit just so you can get towards the Orwell area. When this tornadic thunderstorm was moving through, we did get a signature that we may have had a little bit of debris being wafted. That's what you're seeing right there, right around Route 46. And as we've gone forward in time to now the current time, you can still see where we have some of those colors that aren't quite as bright. So there could still be a little bit of muddiness in the water in terms of whether or not we have some debris in the atmosphere, but certainly it has been something that we've been monitoring closely. All right, update from the National Weather Service. They have allowed the tornado warning to expire. We are still monitoring the areas of rotation, but now that that tornado warning has officially expired, the rotation is weakened enough. We are going to let you go back to regular programming. But if we have any other tornado warnings that are issued for any parts of Northeast Ohio, we will be back on the air to give you the latest updates through those tornado warnings. For now, I'm meteorologist Erica Page. We're going to return you back to your regular programming.